How shall I stand before thee, if not in silence? Let the tongue be humble now. Let the heart become a sanctuary. Let the inner ear be unblocked of its clatter. We do not come to persuade God, nor to rehearse holy words until they become yet another noise. We come to yield. We come to be still long enough that the invisible may announce itself without our interference. Out of the stillness, the presence is not imagined, not asserted. It is felt. It is realized. God must be felt. God must be realized. God must become an experience, or all our talk of God remains the echo of empty chambers. We are not gathered for self-improvement, not to varnish an old belief with a new phrase, not to add another thought to a crowded mind, but to unclutter the inner room where the Father's whisper is already sounding. Not to climb up to a distant heaven, but to notice the kingdom within, nearer than breathing, closer than hands and feet. The paradox that will guide us is this: the shortest interval, when it is true yielding, can open into the boundless. 2 minutes of honest silence may carry more grace than hours of anxious effort. Not by might, not by mental push, but by spirit. Not by bargaining with the infinite, but by consenting to it. Let us begin as those who are willing to listen. Set aside for this first act your questions, your projects, your deserving and undeserving. Do not come to get, come to be met. The silence is not absence, it is the field of divine activity. In that field, the presence acts upon us, softly, steadily, until peace is not a concept we chase, but a climate we recognize. Guidance, when it comes, does not thunder, it dawns. Healing does not jolt, it unveils what always was in God. Because grace loves order, we will honor it with a simple order. Through the coming week, we shall return again and again for but 2 minutes, 4 times a day. Do not imagine this a burden. It is mercy. Little doors, opened often, let in much light. These returnings will bypass the mind's grand resistance precisely because they are small. They will build inner evidence not by argument, but by repeated contact. We are beginning a way of being, pausing, inclining the inner ear, letting the heart become quiet, and trusting that in the quiet, the presence will make itself known. So now, before any explanation, let there be one honest moment of hush. Cease taking thought. Breathe without grasping. Turn within. We are not summoning God. We are discovering that God has been here. In this first act, we have already touched the principle. As we are still, the presence announces itself, and this announcement becomes our peace, our guidance, our healing fruit. Let us be honest with one another and with God. If the infinite is truly omnipresent, if the kingdom is within, why have we not consistently lived in its fruit? Peace, guidance, healing, sufficiency. Why have our years of sermons, our shelves of books, our pages of affirmations left us still bargaining with fear, still measuring days by gains and losses? The question is not irreverent. It is the doorway. For truth invites examination, and love is not threatened by our weariness with words that have not become life. The answer is not that you have lacked information. You have had information in abundance. It is that we have cultivated the habit of living outwardly, of speaking about God instead of turning to God, of handling statements instead of yielding to presence. Talking about warmth does not melt the ice in the heart. Only the felt fire does. So it is with God. God must be felt. God must be realized. God must become an experience. Until the living contact is made, the phrases that name God remain, at best, beautiful garments on an empty form. Not to seek God in events, but to recognize God as the life that lives us. Not to chase God through persons and outcomes, but to discern God as the mind within that knows before we ask. Not to strain for signs, but to rest in the soul of us that forever announces, I am here. We have, in our disappointment, treated the Spirit as a tool for improving effects, health, supply, companionship, rather than as the very presence from which all true effects flow. We have attempted, by mental push, to pry open what only grace bestows when thought is quiet and the heart yields. The Father within, He doeth the works. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Here is the gentle rebuke that frees. We have expected results from our effort rather than from grace realized. We have depended upon louder prayers, longer treatments, cleverer formulas, as if God were deaf to anything but our intensity. But intensity is not intimacy. The infinite is not persuaded by many words. It is unveiled when we stop taking thought and make our contact with the infinite invisible. Sermons may comfort. Readings may inspire. Affirmations may steady a wavering mood. But none of these, of themselves, reveal the presence that performs the works. Only turning within, only consenting to the silence, only dwelling, however briefly, in the secret place, ripens talk into realization. When the inner ear is opened, when we stop directing God and begin listening for God, grace takes the field. Then peace is not an achievement, it is a climate. Guidance is not a guess, it is a recognition. Healing is not a wrestle, it is the unveiling of what is eternally true in God. Therefore, we will not abandon the sacred words, but we will let them lead us to their source. We will not discard the helps of devotion, but we will cease to depend on them as substitutes for contact. The habit of outwardness has disappointed us. The practice of inwardness will free us. And it will do so not by effort, but by the presence realized in silence, 4 small returnings a day, until what we have spoken of becomes what we live in. Here is the principle, plain enough to guide a child and deep enough to sustain a saint. Out of the silence comes the presence. Out of the presence comes the power. Out of the power comes the fruit. Reverse it and you lose it. Chase the fruit and you forfeit the power. Strain for the power and you miss the presence. Fill the silence with words and you drown the very river you sought to drink. But keep the order: silence, presence, power, fruit, and grace will keep your house. Silence is not a vacuum. It is a channel. Silence is not empty. It is receptive. When we become still, not apathetic, not dull, but quietly alert, listening with the inner ear for the still, small voice just behind the noise of thought, the Christ activity stirs of itself. The infinite invisible does not enter because we beg. It appears because nothing in us is pushing it out. In that interior hush, where we cease directing and begin consenting, the presence that has always been at the core of us is felt. God must be felt. God must be realized. God must become an experience. Do not look for that experience outside. The kingdom of God is within you, not here or there, not in this mountain or at that altar, but in spirit and in truth. in the inmost sanctuary that is nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. If the kingdom is within, the contact must be within. To take thought about God is to remain at the door. To turn within in silence is to cross the threshold and find that the host has been waiting. As an activity of your very own consciousness, yet not personal to your little self, the presence announces, I am, and in that I am, there is rest. And then, without clamor, power. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. The Father within, He doeth the works. Our task is not to force a current, it is to remove the hand that has been holding the switch. Yielding is our work, operation is God's. We stop taking thought, we stop prescribing outcomes, we lay down the tools of spiritual ambition, and grace, having room at last, performs its silent office. Invisible as wind, and yet as evident as a sail filling, the power moves, unseen, unheard, and the outer scene begins to bear witness. What witness? Peace that holds under pressure. Guidance that is not a guess, but a recognition. Healing that is not a manufactured cure, but the unveiling of what is eternally true in God. Supply that is not gotten from outside, but recognized as the flow of the one life in and as you. These are not prizes for the clever. They are fruits of realized presence. One with God is a majority. In the light of that oneness, the threats and lacks that haunted us are seen for what they were, appearances without root in the one mind. Therefore, we honor the silence as the operational field of grace. We will not measure it by fireworks or judge it by immediate sensation. We will give it place. We will give it time. We will give it consent. And as surely as dawn follows night, out of the silence, the presence will be felt. Out of the presence, the power will flow. And out of that power, the fruit will come, in forms appropriate to the wisdom of love that lives us. Take this now as mercy, not as burden. We are not adding weight to a weary schedule. We are making 4 small clearings in the thicket, so that light may find you again and again. Brief enough to be done, frequent enough to retrain consciousness. Think of it not as setting an alarm for God, but as consenting to be available, regularly, predictably, humbly, so that without might, without mental effort, the presence may announce itself. 2 minutes, 4 times a day, for 7 days. This is not a taskmaster's whip. It is a doorway that opens so easily, so often, that even the habit of outwardness grows tired of resisting and lets you pass through. Let us agree upon 4 appointments, adaptable to your life, but steady in their rhythm. First, upon waking, before the hand reaches for the device, before the world's first claim upon you, turn within. The second, midday, between the morning's scatter and the afternoon's press, even if it must be taken in the hum of an office or the stillness of a parked car. The third, late afternoon or early evening, when the day's noise is still in the air, but you choose to step aside and listen for the still, small voice. And the fourth, just before sleep. Lay the head down, not on the cushion of worry or analysis, but in the secret place. Should your circumstances shift, shift the clock, not the covenant. Morning, noon, evening, bedtime, in whatever form your day wears. Now, what are these 2 minutes? Not a performance, not a self-treatment, not a pleading prayer. This is simply the turning within and the listening. Cease taking thought. Let the inner ear be attentive, as if leaning toward a beloved whisper just beyond the physical ear. soft gaze, unforced breath, a heart yielded. No statements to convince, no petitions to secure, only the willingness to be still and to know. Make your contact with the infinite invisible, not by words, but by readiness. If a word rises of its own accord, "Father, I am here," let it be as a bell that calls to silence, not as speech that fills it. Why this frequency? Because consciousness has been trained by repetition to live outwardly, and it will be retrained by repetition to dwell inwardly. One long session can be as rain upon a thirsty field, but 4 brief showers through the day sink in, keep the soil receptive, and turn a single wetting into an atmosphere. Each returning interrupts the old momentum, refuses the tyranny of appearances, and establishes a new center from which you move, think, and act. Out of the silence, again and again, the presence will be felt. Out of the presence, again and again, the power will flow. And gradually, without strain, the fruit, peace, guidance, healing, becomes climate instead of event. Let us walk this week together without breaking the secrecy of the heart. If you wish for companionship, make it simple and spare. Day 1 kept. Day 3 kept. Day 7 kept. No reports, no comparisons, no measuring of lights and sounds. Only the quiet encouragement that constancy is being honored. Guard the pearl. Do not spend it in conversation. Our aim is not to exhibit results, but to abide. And as we keep faith with these little doors, 4 times a day, we shall find that the house itself has changed address, from striving at the circumference to living at the center. The regimen is a mercy. The doorway is small. The passage opens to all. Enter it, and enter it again, until returning becomes dwelling, and dwelling becomes life. Now let us make the way plain, so simple that no hour of the day can refuse it. When the moment for your 2 minutes arrives, pause at the threshold as you would pause before entering a sanctuary. Let the body be seated or standing without strain. Let the hands rest where they fall. Loosen the jaw. Let the shoulders drop from the ears. Feel the weight of the hips or the feet, and allow the breath to be exactly as it wishes, unmanaged, uncounted, unforced. Close the eyes if that helps, or let them rest in a soft, unfocused gaze. But in either case, let the gaze itself become gentle, as if it were bowing within. Then turn attention, not outward, not upward, but inward, as if listening just behind the physical ear for the still small voice that does not insist, that does not shout, yet forever is. Do not try to concentrate hard. Rest. Do not try to visualize outcomes. Consent to presence. Do not work with words. Receive in silence. Not an efforting of the mind, but a yielding of the heart. Not a reaching out to a distant God, but a quiet noticing that the kingdom is within. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. If a word rises of its own accord, let it be a door and not a speech. Thy presence is here. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father within, thou doest the works. Let such recognitions, if they come, ring once like a bell, and then fade into the hush they have called. The common mistake is to try to manufacture a feeling, to strain for a glow, to judge the moment by whether a thrill passes through. Leave that idle. Allow the quiet to be quiet. Allow the surface of the pool to settle itself. You need not smooth it with your hand. What comes may be only a widening of space, a loosening in the chest, a sense that something else, gentler, wiser, has taken the seat. Or it may seem that nothing at all occurs. Accept that, too. The acceptance is the opening. The non-interference is the faith. God must be felt, yes, but the feeling often dawns as awareness, almost as the absence of bother. Stay with that. Let awareness be enough, and the awareness will become presence by grace. If thoughts wander, notice them as passing travelers, and return to the listening behind the ear. If an old prayer formula tries to enlist you, smile inwardly and let it go. Unless a single phrase truly arises, then let it serve and be still again. Your part is small and steady. Relax, listen, yield. The Christ performs all things for us. The Father within, He doeth the works. When the 2 minutes have flowered to their end, do not snap the stem. Remain for a heartbeat more. Offer no postscript of analysis, only a simple inner bow. Thank you, Father. Thy will be done. And rise without haste. Carry a living thread of that listening into the next act, into the washing of a dish, the dialing of a number, the opening of a door. Keep this ear open, just a little, as you move. Not in a trance, not absent from your duties, but companioned by the hush you have touched, so that your doing proceeds from being. In this way, the 2 minutes succeed by yielding, listening within until the presence is felt, however gently, and the felt presence begins to govern the hour that follows. Day 1 may surprise you with its very ordinariness. You sit for the 2 minutes. You yield as best you can, and the mind, trained for years to live at the circumference, scurries and fidgets and whispers, "Nothing is happening." Let it whisper. Do not fight it. Do not scold it. The restlessness, the doubt, the itch to check a clock or improve the process, these are not failures. They are the signs that outward dependence is losing its unquestioned rule. A spell is broken not by wrestling with it, but by turning away from it to the light. You are not conquering the mind. You are consenting to the silence. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Therefore, in these first 2 days, refuse the old grading habit. Do not measure the silence. Do not ask if it was deep or shallow, sweet or dry, bright or dull. Do not take your spiritual temperature. The only success is returning. If you keep the appointment, you have kept faith. If you miss one, do not sermonize yourself. Keep the next. The presence does not need your report. The presence requires only your availability. The Father within, He doeth the works. Your part is the humble showing up, the simple yielding. And as you keep these small covenants, notice the first proofs that do not trumpet themselves. You may find that a remark which yesterday would have stung lands today with less bite. You may pause an extra heartbeat before replying, and in that beat, a softness enters. The traffic light holds you, and you do not argue with it. A small inconvenience rises, and instead of a flood of indignation, there is space. Unremarkable, ordinary space, yet somehow kind. A call comes with worrisome news, and for one inexplicable moment, you are calm. Do not magnify these. Do not dismiss them. They are the early dew on the grass, the subtle witness that out of the silence, the presence is already tempering the hour. Between the formal times, practice the art of the single inward glance. No session, no posture, no closed eyes. just a whisper within. The kingdom is within. Or, here I am, Father. Then go on. Do not stretch these into extra minutes. Let them be as sparrows touching the branch and taking wing. Their brevity is their strength. They keep the inner ear slightly open without turning life into one long effort at devotion. In this way, the day is threaded with remembrance without becoming heavy with practice. Guard the simplicity. Keep the secrecy. Do not explain this to the curious. Do not argue with the skeptical. Do not compare your moments with another's tales. Let the work be hidden, and let the fruit, when it ripens, speak of its own tree. Day 1. Day 2. The victory is not ecstasy. It is returning. Again and again you turn. Again and again you yield. Again and again you consent to the hush. And in that rhythm, scarcely noticed at first, grace finds the door open and begins to live your day. By the third day, something in you begins to tire of managing God and managing life. And this fatigue is holy. Let it be so. Here the great reversal waits. Not to use the presence to fix your life, but to let the presence live your life. Not to direct spirit toward effects, but to yield to spirit as cause. Not to add God to a self-improvement plan, but to watch self-improvement vanish in the light of Christ activity. Midweek is this turn. The words may sound familiar, but the recognition is new. I live, yet not I. Christ liveth in me. Do not hold that as theology. Receive it as the inner fact that, in the silence, begins to outshine your cherished opinions about yourself. This is not an invitation to passivity. It is an invitation to availability. The Father within, He doeth the works. Therefore, I stop taking thought. I stop the mental wrestling that has strained my nerves and dulled my ear. When a problem rises to the surface, an illness report, a financial twinge, a relationship abrasion, notice the reflex to pick up tools and fix. Midweek, you lay the tools down. You drop the burden, literally, in the lap of the infinite invisible. You become still 2 minutes. You listen with the inner ear. If a word arises of its own accord, Father, thy presence is here. Let it ring and subside. Then keep still. The Christ performs all things for us. Guidance will show itself in ways the mind cannot boast about. Not always as voices, not as pageants of light, more often as clarity where fog had gathered, restraint where impulse had been king, right timing where hurry had owned the clock. A quiet no will close your lips before a harsh retort forms. A compassionate yes will loosen the fist around an old grievance. A door you were pounding stays shut, and peace does not mind. Another door you had not noticed swings. An email is written and not sent. A phone call is delayed, and in the delay, the circumstance rearranges itself without your push. That is not cleverness. That is the presence acting as your very consciousness, doing the works, maintaining harmony by being harmony. Beware now the subtlest snare, spiritual ambition. The urge to demonstrate, to produce a proof, to hurry grace into a testimonial. Leave it. Fruit is not your assignment. Abiding is. Abide in me and you bear fruit. This is the order. Keep the aim as realization of presence, and fruit follows like sap swelling an unseen branch. Keep the aim as outcomes, and the branch grows brittle. One with God is a majority, but the majority is not measured in headlines. It is recognized in poise, in rightness, in the effortless aptness of the hour. Therefore, through day 3 and day 4, let your 4 appointments be stripped of bargaining. Enter them as availability, not as projects. Make your contact with the infinite invisible, and then be still. Refuse the itch to take thought again as soon as the bell of recognition has sounded. Carry the hush into your doing, and watch how doing takes on another quality. Fewer corrections, fewer apologies, more first-time right, more mercy where once there was calculation. If fear swells, use the ancient rope to steady the descent. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within, He doeth the works. Speak it once, as bell, then yield. The more you consent to be lived, the more your life becomes livable. This is the not but turn, not striving to use God, but God using you. Not improving the self, but the self recognizing itself in you. Keep the covenant, keep the secrecy, keep the ear open, and let Christ activity, under the quiet of midweek, take the field. Day 5 and day 6 draw you further inward, where a quiet certainty begins to dawn. There is one mind. Not a better human mind, not your mind polished and trained, but the mind that is God, the life that is God, the substance that is God. In that mind, error has no law, no cause, no continuity. It appears, it argues, it threatens, and it melts when beheld from the altitude of oneness. Not to fight appearances, but to outgrow them. Not to battle shadows, but to turn on the light. As consciousness rests in one mind, the tyranny of appearances loosens, and harmony is recognized as the underlying fact. This is the healing vision, and it is as practical as it is holy. When the mind rushes in with its basket, here is a patient, here is a problem, here is a lack, you do not accept the labels. You look again. You look until the mask drops and you discern what is truly there. God. You do not hypnotize yourself into optimism. You awaken out of hypnotism into truth. There isn't any such patient as a self apart from God. There isn't any such condition as a life outside the life that is infinite. I will tell you what is in the basket. God. God as life, as mind, as substance, as law, as the very presence that performs all things for us. Beholding this, quietly, without strain, you feel the weight of fear begin to slide. Notice how the practice changes your seeing. Less personalizing, less blame, less clutching at causes and culprits. You find compassion rising without absorption into the picture, love without being pulled under by it. You hear a report, but you do not become the report. You remain in the secret place, and from there you bless. The mouth slows, the temper softens, the urge to dramatize wanes. Honesty becomes gentle, restraint becomes strength, forgiveness becomes natural. Ethical fruit, not as effort, but as the fragrance of realized presence. One with God is a majority, and in that majority you can afford to be merciful. For these 2 days, let the exercise be single and spare. In your 2 minutes, do not bring a list. Bring whatever presses at the door of thought and hold it lightly, not to fix it, but to let it dissolve into one recognition. Presence is. If a word is needed, let it be only this: God is. Or, be still and know that I am God. Ring it once, and then be still. Stay until, however gently, the label fades and the fact remains. Rest in the felt rightness that needs no argument. The Father within, He doeth the works. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit. Then rise and carry that beholding into the hour. When the phone rings with worry in its voice, breathe once and remember, one mind. When a fault in another parades before you, lift the basket and look again. God. When your own old fear taps you on the shoulder, do not wrestle. Return, if only for a heartbeat, to presence is. You will find that decisions clarify without haste, that apologies come without humiliation, that generosity moves without calculation. This is not self-improvement. This is self-recognition. Keep the appointments, keep the secrecy, keep the ear open. As you abide in one mind, appearances lose their command, and the underlying harmony, the only reality in God, stands revealed. This seventh day is not an ending. It is a beginning. Commencement, not graduation. The week has not earned you a medal. It has opened a door. You have proved enough to trust the principle. Out of the silence comes the presence. Out of the presence, the power. And out of that power, the fruit. Do not now turn back to the noise for confirmation. Turn further in. The kingdom is within. The life is here, and it will be kept by the same small faithfulness that brought you to this morning. What evidences should you notice? Quietly, without clutching at them. A more interior hush, even in the midst of activity. A quicker recovery when agitation takes the field. What lasted hours now dissolves in minutes, sometimes in a breath. A clarity that is not argument, but rightness. The next step seen rather than forced. Gentler speech that needs fewer repairs. A loosening of compulsion. The hand that reaches for the device pauses. The tongue that would explain or justify finds itself content to be still. The appetite that once demanded more discovers it is already supplied. These are not prizes. They are signs that the presence is becoming climate. Now the onward pattern. If you can, keep the 4 appointments for another week exactly as before. Morning, midday, evening, and just before sleep. Let the rhythm carve a deeper channel. Then, as life shapes itself around the center, allow the appointments to be guided, but do not lose constancy. Some days the 2 minutes will stretch to 3 or 4 without strain. Other days they will be only 2, but steady. And through the hours, keep the single inward glance alive. Brief, natural acknowledgments. Here I am, Father. Or simply, I am. Not to take thought, but to stay in touch. This is how returning grows into abiding, and abiding becomes the way you are in the world. Protect the pearl. Reduce noise not by vow, but by grace-led preference. Let newspapers, radios, screens, and chatter recede to their proper distances. You will not miss what you do not feed. Decline the invitations to argue your practice. The hunger to debate is the hunger of those who have not yet tasted. Share only where love leads, and even then, be spare. Guard the secrecy of the heart. Do not spend your realization in explanations. The pearl is not for exhibition. It is for living. So take this day as charge and blessing. Be still and know. Not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit. The Father within, He doeth the works. The Christ performs all things for us. Your part is small and holy. Turn within, listen, Yield. 2 minutes, 4 times a day, and as often as grace touches you between. One with God is a majority. Therefore, go in peace, carry the hush into your steps, and let the presence that has met you in silence now be the life by which you live. Bless you.